All right, good evening. I'm going to call the January 19th, 2022 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. In attendance via Zoom are Vice Chair Donna D., Supervisors Morris, Dowling, and Johnson. Also in attendance are Solicitor Mark Thompson, Interim Township Manager Jeff Eastburn, Township Administrator Melissa Ortega, and Township Secretary Sarah Patton. And there are, Jeff, do we have a quick count on how many members of the public we have? Looks like we have about 8 or so, something like that, or maybe even more. Looks like we have maybe
I keep
12 members.
Forgetting to include John Auerbach.
About 12 members of the,
Okay.
11 members of the public and John Auerbach. All right, so let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and we can get started. All right, I pledge allegiance
Flag of the United
States of America
and
to the republic
for
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty,
justice
justice for all.
For all.
You went on mute,
I
Dave.
just need to make a brief message about an executive session we had last Thursday, was it? And this was to discuss some litigation that's taking place, and we needed to solicit some advice from our counsel. All right, so we can move on to public comment. So public comment, we have 2 public comments in every meeting. The first public comment can include any comments relating to the agenda items for tonight's meeting. So we want to give everybody who wishes the opportunity to speak. Even though we are meeting virtually, you still must state your name and whether you are a resident of the township or a non-resident taxpayer in the township. If you do not identify by yourself, your comments will not be included in the official minutes. So before we move on with the meeting, is there any public comment?
Yeah, that's John Auerbach, Franklin Township resident and taxpayer. My only comment is that I strongly support Ling Weber for appointment to the open auditor position. I think she's fully qualified. I've known her for a long time. Find her to be easy to go with, in non-confrontational, but technically very knowledgeable in the field of finance.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Any other comments from the public? All right, well, with that, let's move to the next agenda item. Lieutenant Dan Steele here from the Pennsylvania State Police. Oh, I'm sorry, Donna, this is you.
No, finish up, Dave. You're doing great. That's good.
I would like to introduce Lieutenant Dan Steele, and he will give an update to Franklin Township.
Right. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'm Lieutenant Dan Steele, Station Commander here at Avondale. Been assigned here since March of last year, 2021, and have developed a great relationship with Mr. Eastburn there. He's definitely one of the most active township managers that I have dealt with here in my near 20 years with the state police. So we at least speak at least once a week, either by phone or by email. So I have 20 years here with the state police. Been a commander in the state police as a lieutenant the last 6 years. Been in multiple positions, and I'm really, really enjoying the Avondale assignment here. Grew up in Chester County, so it was really nice to return home. Just a little quick update for Franklin. Obviously, the men and women here love serving Franklin Township. Beautiful township you have there. Very safe. There's no ongoing crime wave in Franklin. One of the biggest concerns, of course, we get are speeding complaints, and we get that here throughout southern Chester County, especially on some of the back township roads. But looking at some of the numbers for Franklin for 2021, so we had 630 calls of service for Franklin. We had 114 crimes reported. Most of those were property crimes, and we had under 20 personal crimes, such as harassments or assaults. So very safe on that regards. For crashes, we had about 40 crashes on the roadways there. 896 is one of the biggest culprits, of course, one of the most traveled, heavily traveled. And only a few injury crashes. Less than 10 of the 39 crashes involved injury. So that's a good thing. That also shows us that when the crashes do occur, the speeds aren't at a point, and we obviously have some luck on our side, but the speeds aren't at a point where we're seeing a lot of injury crashes. So that's a good thing. So generally speaking, we're always, we provide police services 24/7 to Franklin, and we always have troopers assigned to Franklin. It's one of our township zones that we have. We cover about 17 townships here in Southern Chester County, full or part-time. So when you look at Franklin compared to like some of your neighbors, New London, for example, New London was closer to the 1,000 responses for the year. Whereas you look at London, Britain, they were under 300 responses for the year. So you kind of see what kind of resources we have, that are needed for Franklin Township out of the year of at least 2021. Very concerned about the closure of Jennersville Hospital. It is putting a strain on all the services, whether it is our services, but EMS most importantly. So I can tell you that the Avondale and West Grove fire companies, have plans in place to better serve the residents of Franklin, but there is a concern, with the hospital. Is that going to be a long-term closure, or maybe will someone hopefully come out of the sky there and buy that hospital and open it back up? So there are longer transport times for EMS, namely, but we keep an open communication with the fire services. We generally don't respond to fire ambulance calls unless it's life-threatening, such as like a cardiac arrest or a choking. So we do anticipate some more EMS-related responses in Franklin. But at this point, as I opened up with, Franklin is a really, really safe community to live in. Great relationship with your township manager. He keeps us posted on all the concerns in the township. We ask you that you give us the concern, especially for speeding and some of the other. We just had a recent checks we were doing, I think, of one of the a local parking area. I think there were some concerns with drug use or whatnot. If someone calls us in, or Jeff gives us a call about some speeding areas or concerns with Crossing Park, for example, maybe at night, what we do is we set up a recurring patrol check, usually for about 30 days. And we at some point during the day, we have to check those locations, and we try to spend some time there to deter any sort of speeding, do speed enforcement, or any criminal activity. So it's good that we get communication. And like I said, Jeff is definitely on top of it, and we try to make that a priority, depending on our call volume. So we're always here, open door. You can reach me by email. If you go on Google and just type in Pennsylvania State Police Avondale, you could get my email information. Any concerns, go to Jeff. He gets it right to me. Even after business hours, we're in touch if needed. But we're proud to serve Franklin. I think we do a good job down there. We're in the township often. But as you can see from other townships, you're not at our higher end of responses and some of the other townships we cover that I didn't mention. But, we do have some resources throughout the year in the township. So any questions at all?
Lieutenant, I want to thank you. You guys are so good to us, our community. We know that you appreciate us, and we appreciate you. And thanks for the kind words for Jeff. I appreciate hearing that.
Great, thanks.
So
Anybody else?
we do a lot. It sounds like Jeff keeps you updated and aware. But is there anything that we can do to help you? Get, whether it's help you with outreach or what have you.
Well, I try to always remind when I'm on these calls or in person, when it comes to speeding on the township roads by the vehicle code, the posting is every half mile there must be a speed limit sign. So when we get a complaint of speeding, first question we try to ask is the roadway posted properly? Mm-hmm. So that's one helpful thing for us. If there is a roadway that is owned by the township, maintained by the township, and there's a speeding concern, the first thing is it properly posted? Because if not, for the vehicle code, it's a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. And we obviously know a lot of these local roads cannot handle that sort of speed. But, some of the townships, whether it's cost or whether it's just don't have the manpower to put the signs up, they don't always get posted. So for speeding, that's a big one for us. Is it posted properly?
Great.
So is that something we should be looking at as a township to make sure that our main roads that we're concerned with have those markers every half a mile?
If Jeff is on, Jeff, you may be
Yes.
on mute. You there?
Yes, and that's something that we've tried to look at over the years. And I know we've done Walnut Glen, Flint Hill Road, and some others. And we are always very, we will work with the state police if they see something amiss as well. But it's something I always have on my radar screen to look for.
Can we, one of the thoughts I had is I wonder if we could use the images that we generated with robotics to kind of do a spot check on some of those roads. Right.
That's- Excellent point.
We don't have to
Yes.
drive them. We'll just look at the pictures and say, okay, well, here's the stretch that's a half. So I don't know, Lieutenant Steele, we use this service called Robotics.
Okay.
And essentially we have a photo of every 1/10 of a mile of road in Franklin Township. I mean, it's probably
Yes.
more than that. So we can see exactly where all of our, as long as it's in the picture, we should be able to see exactly where all of our stop signs are and speed limit signs, and
Great.
we might be able to use that.
Yeah, that'll be
That's a
helpful.
good idea.
And even if it's not posted properly, if it's communicated to us, maybe we can at least make a presence, And then secondly, on some of the roadways, when it is even posted properly, is there a safe place for us to sit and actually then make traffic stops, right? I mean, some of the roadways just aren't conducive to doing that, but we can at least maybe make a presence. The number one thing is communicating to us where the concerns are, whether it's like a Crossing Park issue, which is a beautiful park, by the way. I mean, that is outstanding. That is one of the nicest parks I've seen a township maintain in all my travels with PSP, or it's a speeding complaint. So
To give credit to Lieutenant Steele's people, over the years, I probably received 2 or 3 phone calls from the troopers there offering suggestions for signs. And again, we always work with the state police, and it's never been a problem, and we make sure we get it rectified.
one question I do have, I try to ask for, and this could be a best guess. I know the census data, I think, just came out, but where is Franklin right now with population for residents?
I think it's 4,400, something like that. I think
Okay.
that's rough. I think
Yeah.
it's roughly 4,400 people. That sound
All right.
about right, Jeff?
Yes, and I can check on that for an exact figure tomorrow or the next day, sir.
Okay, I'd just like to have a roundabout. It's amazing how we service some areas with just a couple thousand residents to London Grove, I think, reported over 10,000 at the last meeting I went to. It's just amazing how there's such an array here in Southern Chester County. So, but yeah, I'm always available. Please email or a call my way, and we'll try to get the answer for you or address whatever issue you have.
Thank
Great.
you, sir.
Great.
Yep, thanks again for coming out, Dan. Thank you.
All right, I'll see you in person hopefully soon. Okay.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Well, it's me. I'd like to introduce Shane Morgan. I see she's on the call, but before I do, I'll just give a little context. Last March, we submitted a request to Shane to say, to let her know we support the Watershed Association's proposal. The state altogether is trying to improve water quality, and that means improving runoff. And so we proposed an area, a farm where we were going to do some improvements. We sought a contribution of, I think, $50,000 from the government, and then we were going to contribute $30,000. So Shane, can you fill us in on what's going on?
Yes, thank you, Nancy. I wanted to take a brief moment to kind of introduce myself to the new board members who haven't gotten as familiar with me. So I'm the manager of the local White Clay Creek Wild and Scenic River program. It's a program that is funded by the National Park Service. It's a pretty unique designation to be wild and scenic. Less than 0.25% of all rivers in the United States have this designation. And we're even more unique because we're considered a partnership river. And that's important to this context because you guys are our partners. So all the municipalities throughout the watershed, the 2 counties, the 2 states, we depend on you to leverage our funding to implement projects set forth in our watershed management plan. So we try and leverage our funds so that there's mutual benefits for whichever township we're working in, as well as to the watershed in general. So partnership rivers are locally managed. There's no federally owned land. There's no direct federal management, which makes us especially unique. And we do get funding from the government, and we also have federal oversight on certain permits that would impact the bed and bank of the river. But other than that, it's pretty much locally driven. And here's a map of the watershed just to familiarize everyone with where you are. Here's Franklin right here. So you can see you're just one little piece of this watershed. It's by state, Delaware, Pennsylvania. We have about 199 stream miles that have this extra protection. And really our goals are to promote, protect, enhance natural and cultural resources throughout the watershed, and also promote a balance of recreational enjoyment. So it's pretty broad, our scope, and one of the biggest issues is stormwater. So we've really been kind of focused on that for the past decade, really trying to focus on BMPs that ameliorate some of the effects of stormwater. So some example projects are we worked with West Grove Borough to do a green stormwater infrastructure plan, and then we implemented 2 rain gardens to date from that plan. This is one of them in front of the Avondale Library. We've done multiple riparian buffers. This one's actually in Franklin Township on Mr. Pearson's farmland right off of Churchill Road. That was implemented in 2020. And then we also provide funding for open space acquisitions or conservation easements to kind of provide some seed money for projects to move forward. So those are all things you should keep in mind. You know, if there's projects that are on your radar and you want to talk to me, please reach out. I will obviously do the same. And so that's why I'm here today. And Nancy gave a pretty good introduction to the Keene, I'm calling it the Keene Farm Buffer Project. That's not actually the landowner anymore. But all of this land here in the red was eased a while back with open space funds. Most of this is farmed. All of the grassy areas are pretty much farmed. The current landowner actually lives in Florida and rents an apartment here on this property and then leases the land to a local farmer. But what we noticed, and this is going back to 2018 when we were trying to ID areas to do riparian buffers in the different townships. We were looking for preserved land because it's easier sometimes to get grant funding to do these types of projects. Doesn't mean you can't do it on land that's not preserved, but it's easier to get funding to do it on these types of lands and land that wasn't already in forest cover. So you can see there's trees along this stream right here, but they're pretty sparse, and a lot of this is just multiflora rose and shrubby plants that are and invasive vines that are really doing a lot of damage to the native forest. And then on the south side of the creek, there's 2 farm ponds and a few little tributaries and wetlands, and they're largely unbuffered. And so there's about 5.5 acres here that we're proposing doing some invasive species management as well as planting trees. So it was a couple years in progress. We finally got the landowner to sign on. We got the commitment from the township. There's a funding commitment from Wild and Scenic Program. And then we applied to the grant, I want to say in September of this year, a DCNR multifunctional buffer grant for $53,000, and found out we received that grant in October, but had to go through the open process of putting out an RFP and accepting bids. So that happened in November. And we went with Bill Tatey. Some of you might know him. He's also a resident of Franklin Township, and he runs a pretty good business, really doing a lot of buffer planting and invasive management. He's done a ton of work for Stroud and Mount Cuba Center, came with great references. And he is the contractor that we hired to do all of the work for this property. So that happened in December, and now we're in January and nothing has happened, but that is largely because of the weather and the freeze thaw, and this being a wet area. It finally started to freeze, and then today it started to thaw again. But we're hopeful that maybe next week work will get started out there. And I spoke to Bill today, and that's the tentative plan. We're the next job on his list of jobs, and he's completing one right now. So as long as the weather cooperates, there should be stuff going on by the end of January. Once the invasives are cleared out, and there is a lot, so that's probably going to take a few weeks. And it's all going to be done by mechanical removal. He has all the equipment, chippers, machinery. It'll be planted in April. 1,700 trees were ordered for the site, so it's about 5.5 acres that will be planted also by Tatey and his workers. If it doesn't get completed in April for some reason, then we can do it in the fall as well, or split it up into 2 plantings. But right now the goal is to get it planted in April. And then the fun part will be managing it and not walking away from it. And that's where your funding comes in, and some of our funding as well, where we will do annual mowings at a minimum for the first 4 to 10 years, possibly 2 mowings a year, depending on the invasive pressure that we see. And again, lessons learned from Stroudwater Research Center, mowing is the best way to get these trees established in the first couple of years to limit competition. Once they get established, I would still like to see management of the buffer and some mowing. So we're going to use that funding in the full amount to keep up with this buffer and give these trees the best chance they have to get established. They're also going to be mulched with crushed rock, which is another thing that Stroud has learned throughout the multiple buffers that they've been doing with their William Penn funding, is that the crushed rock helps prevent the voles from getting in, and it also limits some of the competition and eliminates the need to spray herbicides. There might be a chance that we have to do some herbicide spraying after the fact, but the crushed rock should at least limit that, if not prevent it in entirety. So that's pretty much the project in a nutshell. It was included. This is one of the projects, along with the Pearson buffer, that went in fall of 2020, that are included in your stormwater permit plan that you submitted to DEP. These projects were in there for sediment reductions. So it's a win-win in the sense that you guys will get a credit for your permit, and we get to see more trees, which is good for water quality, good for habitat. So that's pretty much all I have. So I'll open it up for any questions you might have about the project, if you have any.
So I wonder, this is just out of curiosity's sake, when the weather is more amenable, if maybe we can take a field trip down there and actually see some of the work that you're doing. I haven't been there. I don't know if it's something that's easy to access or whatnot.
Yeah, it's not actually the easiest property to access. It's right on, I think you guys can see my arrow. This is the bend in Auburn Road.
Okay.
It's just Auburn, I think, right? Auburn Road.
Yeah.
And then it comes up, I think this is Creek Road or Churchill over here.
Okay.
I think it's Creek, because here's Bamshire Preserve right here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bank barn here. That I have a Mini Cooper, so sometimes I park there if I feel like I can get in and out. Otherwise, I have the contact information for the tenant, and I'll park in that driveway. But there's not, so it wasn't good for volunteer planning, because sometimes we will use volunteers, but there was nowhere to park here. It's pretty steep. That's the other thing. This slope here is very, very steep, and this is pretty wet. So, however, that doesn't mean that one person can't stop out. If you want to do a tour of this place at some point, I can certainly walk you around either before or after or during the project.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what one of these projects looks like. And
yeah.
I've seen the aftermath's not the right word, but I've seen them completed. I've never seen them kind of in process and sort of the considerations you do. And so it would be just for my own edification, really.
Sure. And this one's unique in the sense that there is a lot of invasive work that needs to be done. This is not ideal in the sense that a lot of prep work is going to be done. Like $20,000 of the budget is going into site prep alone. And so, you know, in the ideal world, we'd pick a property like the Pearson property and have a willing landowner who has been mowing. I hate to say you shouldn't be mowing right up to the creek. It's never a good idea, but it's easier to do a tree planting if someone has been doing that because the invasives aren't already there. So this one is unique in that respect. Once it's cleared out though, it's a pretty standard tree planting. And all the trees will be protected as well from deer. So.
And I think one of the things to point out, if it wasn't obvious to the residents, is when we talk about stormwater management and the money that we spend on stormwater management, this is what we do. This is the result. These are the projects that we do. And when we talk about the money that goes to stormwater management.
Yeah. And we've really been pushing for that with the municipalities. And I think for a while there, maybe DEP wasn't thinking of riparian buffers as BMPs. Usually we think of retention basins or something that's like you're visibly capturing the water. But yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
Shane, I have two questions. If the 1,700 trees, are they just going to go right around that little belly and fill in the areas around the stream that are open or that will be open?
So good question, because I didn't even say what any of this was here. The purple line is kind of the boundary of the planting. And so there's these little dash lines are like ephemeral streams. So sometimes it's wet there and sometimes it's not, but it's considered a stream. And the green is a 35-foot buffer on either side of that. And the yellow from the main tributary right here is 100 feet. So I just wanted to show how deep the buffer would be. And yes, it's going to go around the ponds with special care not to put anything on the embankments because these are farm ponds. So we're going to not plant anything right here. And then these little stars are areas where the landowner wanted access to the ponds. Like he was worried about not being able to get in and like, I don't know, take a little boat out or fish or something when he does come and visit the property. So those stars are where there's going to be a 30-foot gap. So like the closest we'll plant to trees is 30 feet so that the canopy can close in, but the homeowner can still have access to his ponds. We're trying to move this one and convince them that this isn't a good spot, that it should be here, but you know, Paul Overton is going to help with that. I think he's on this call, and I should give a shout out to Paul because he was very instrumental. He knows the landowner and helped me really shepherd this forward and get his approval. So,
my second question was, if we wanted to go walk this, are we allowed to park at that bank barn if we can?
So, I'm going to ask you not to because the landowner is really particular about it. So I have to make a phone call every time I go out there to the tenant and let him know. If you want to go out with me at some point, or I would say maybe even after or during it's planted, if we want to go out during a date and maybe like carpool and go out there together and park and walk around, we could do that. Otherwise, I don't know, Paul, if you're on here and unmuted, but
yeah, so
Paul is the caretaker in a sense of this property.
I would agree with you that I would definitely not just go wandering around, but Jim and Dave sound like they're interested, and any others, we could definitely arrange a day. We'll all get permission and we'll have a little field trip. So, you know, that would be fine. And I would suggest you do it one trip before any work is done at all. So you can see the condition before. And then maybe do one like during the planting, because as Dave said, we all can see the after in our own parks, but the before and during is what's interesting on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be presumptuous. If you guys could set something up, I'll put my big muddy boots on and we'll head out there. So.
And I would also be interested. So there's a couple of us. That'll be good.
Yeah, no problem. And if we get a couple, we could actually park on Creek Road and walk up through the thicket there. That way there's more parking, but there's a lot of posted signs and no trespassing. And yeah, they're very particular about, a lot of people just assume they can walk on there and that's not the case.
Yeah, it took a lot of convincing with this landowner, so I want to be really, really careful not to overstep any boundaries with him. That's why I'm deferring to Paul, because Paul has a relationship with him already.
But there's no rush, and
Yeah.
you know what, if the, you know, we can certainly wait for the landowner to, you know, give us permission. It's no big
Sure.
deal.
And I mean, for me, I've been in there more than once with my dog. Be prepared for ticks. It is rough in there.
Mhm.
And you can, like Paul says, you can park on creek and you can follow that trail and it gets you awfully close to the land.
I
So
think the trail's over here though, isn't it, Paul? The trail that actually takes you, that
Yeah,
your
you're right,
township trail is right here, I think.
that's the public access trail,
Yeah.
but there is an old road bed that we could walk up. But it's, you know, we're in a public meeting. I don't want to promote people doing that.
Yeah.
right.
Right.
And you won't, from the public trail, you really can't see, because this is a high, like a plateau, and all of this is down pretty low from here. This is all steep slope. So
if it's not-
you wouldn't even be able to see it from the public trail.
Yeah, so if it's not obvious from our conversation, all of this land is here in the orange, is private property. You know, unless you cannot be on here unless you have special permission from the owner, which is what we're trying to get, to just take a look at the project. So.
Yep.
All right, great. Thank you, Shane.
You're
This is
welcome.
Interesting.
Any other questions or anything before I pop off? All right.
No, thank you.
Great. Well, it was nice to see all the new faces. So hopefully in person one day soon.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Shane.
Shane.
Thank you.
Okay.
All
Next
right,
on our
that's my-
agenda. Oh, go
there
ahead.
we go. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Next, I'd like to introduce Teague McDaniel for his Eagle Scout project presentation. Teague, if you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen quick. Hello, my name is Teague McDaniel. I am a Life Scout from Troop 30. My project proposal is to replace the Gagan Trail Bridge with a bridge large enough to hold a riding mower. This project was requested by the township, and I have gotten approval by my troop. The township needs a bridge to be able to support a riding mower. This is because the Gagan Trail receives regular maintenance, but the landscaper is unable to get to the other side without cutting up onto Appleton Road. For installing the new bridge, I will have to remove the old bridge and clear the excess brush. The new bridge will be 8 feet wide and 16 feet long. The bridge will be sloped due to the shape of the hill, but the degree is negligible, only 2 degrees. I plan to buy all of my materials from Oxford Feed and Lumber because they give a 20% discount to scouts. This gives the project an estimated cost of around $700.43. I am requesting $500 of funding from the township, from Franklin Township, and I will reach out through my connections in the Rotary Club to pursue further financing. I plan to do the physical project work over one weekend in March. Hasn't been decided yet, but it will be done in March or April. I will get help from members of my troop and my family. I will recruit them by mentioning it in my project at regular meetings. Any questions?
No, it sounds like, yes, it sounds like a great project. We asked you to do it, so we should be supportive of it.
Yeah, so I guess my only question is your timeline. Is a one weekend enough to clear all that stuff out and build a bridge?
The weekend will be just the physical work, or on site. We'll probably build the bridge before.
Oh,
there,
okay.
That makes sense.
or at least
All right.
part of it.
So,
If you could work with me and when you're ready to buy the materials, if we could put it on our account, then we'll save the sales tax as well.
So Dave, I'm assuming we're going to need a motion to, I'm not, pretty simple, right? But just a motion to agree to the $500 for the project?
I don't know if we do. Do we? I mean, I guess we
Don't
could.
think
We
so.
could always do it. We could always draw a motion.
But I don't think that's necessary, but we can.
We can. It's $500.
Or we can just agree. I mean, I didn't know whether to spend money, you had to make a motion, or we could just say, yes, we agree. Go for
I'll
it.
make the motion to offer Teague $500 to do this project.
I'll
And
second
I'll second that.
it. Any discussion? All right.
And now, Jim, you have to ask us to vote.
I'm sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Record
All
show,
right.
motion passes 5-0.
All right. Congratulations, Teague.
Yep, thank you,
Got
Teague.
yourself a job.
Have fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, Dawn.
Yep, sorry, my old computer is losing its oomph and my picture isn't up today, but I'm working on getting a new laptop and all my stuff ready. But anyway, we need to approve both sets of minutes, I think. One from December 15th, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve version 2 of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes held on December 15th.
Okay, I'll
I'll
second
second
that.
that, Dawn.
All in favor?
Well, I just have a question. What happened to version 1?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure.
I don't know if Sarah's on the line, but I would just ask that if changes are made by the staff, just let us know what they are. As a board, we cannot make changes unless it's in the public. So I'm going to assume that the changes were made in terms of formatting,
Or grammar. or
spelling,
something. Yeah.
things like that. If it goes beyond that, we need to discuss it publicly because I just can't see what was in version 1. So I
Sarah,
don't know what changed.
is Sarah on the call?
I don't think so.
Okay, or Melissa?
Melissa's on the call, but Melissa
Yeah, I
probably.
didn't know what, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But Jeff,
well,
if you could just make sure maybe that, if there's a new version, just to help us explain why, tell us what the change is and, unless it's just formatting, again, that's. no
Nancy,
big
it
deal.
looks like version 2 is marked up on our list. So there's some red highlighting from new words added and a couple grammar mistakes. It doesn't look like much.
I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so you're
think it
saying
was
it's in
just
our book.
editing and grammar mistakes.
Oh, thanks, Melissa.
Okay,
So it's
I would
just
agree with
grammar.
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome.
Great.
okay. So we've had a vote and a second and everybody okayed it. So we have to do the same thing with the January 3rd. And
First, we haven't voted yet. So you
sorry,
just- yeah, so it's all
all
in
in
favor.
favor,
Aye.
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 all opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And then we have to work on the January 3rd Board of Supervisors organizational meeting minutes. And also that was version 2. So I'm assuming that probably is the same scenario, that it's probably just a cleanup of the first version. Would that be right?
I'm looking. I don't actually see.
I can't see it.
I think that would be correct. And I think there was a lot of changes from Jeff or myself that Sarah corrected.
Okay,
grammar.
I
Yeah.
just remember them. I remember them being more grammatical than anything.
okay,
Great.
Yeah, I agree.
all right. Does anybody want to second that then?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
all right, thank you, Don. All right, so now we're moving on to reports. So I will talk about the treasurer's report. This is the comprehensive monthly report of the township financials for the month of December 2021 and year to date. So I propose to make a motion that the board approve the December 2021 treasurer's report, which includes the following disbursements: the general fund with disbursements and transfers of $625,766.64, the Park and Recreation Fund with disbursements of $3,043.07, the Open Space Fund with disbursements of $6,098.75, the Capital Reserve Fund with disbursements of $112,533.96, the Emergency Services Fund of $15,400, the Fire Hydrant Fund with disbursements of $580.80, leaving a balance in all funds totaling $1,281,545.13. May I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Nancy. Thank you. Any discussion on the treasurer's report? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so I'll take the next one, which is the zoning officer's report. And this report was compiled by the zoning officer and includes a number of permits processed and the number of inspections performed and the funds received in the month of November. And in the month of December, I guess you probably meant December, right? In the month of December, 4 permits were issued to a total cost of $1,472.34. Building fees, $925, and then there weren't any miscellaneous or, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. So it's $1,472.34 in building fees, $925 in miscellaneous fees, and $0 in recreation open space impact fees. 17 inspections were performed. I noticed in the zoning report that there was a reference to Bullock Road, and that was an old type note that was back in November. So I'm going to ask Jeff just to give us an update. And then also for Gypsy Hill and Appleton, they were stormwater issues, and I was hoping Jeff could update the board on what those issues were, just maybe give us a little more specifics. So Jeff, let me hand that to you.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Bullock Road and the bamboo issue, I know that Mr. Wallace has been in contact with the resident and has received some pushback from the resident. And Mr. Wallace had been out for a short time, not feeling well. So I've encouraged him to start again next week and, follow what the ordinance tells him to do. 3315 and 3317 Appleton Road, we had received a complaint from a resident who lives at 3315 Appleton. As many of you know, Appleton is a state road, and I've been trying to work with them at this spot for years. They have an inlet box, which basically is exiting to nowhere. When it does exit, it kind of sort of goes down the property line and into a resident's garage. But PennDOT's been difficult with this. So we've suggested that this resident reach out to PennDOT as we have in the past. So we're always willing to try again, but with it being a state road, I don't know that there's much we can do. 109 Gypsy Hill Road is actually the church on Gypsy Hill Road, the stormwater basin. One of our residents from Chesterville Road brought it to our attention. The zoning officer has been in contact with the church. They have been cleaning out the basin, and they have hired Ron Reagan to look at that and for him to give a report to the church. And I know Pete Eisenbrown is going to be in town on the 27th. We've got a couple stops to make, stormwater related, and this will be one of them that we're going to check out and talk to Mr. Mauer, who is one of the residents to the church.
Thanks. It's really helpful to know that it's not something, that these things are in your radar, but it's not something that Franklin Township is necessarily on the hook for. It's more to, whether it's the church or PennDOT. It's not, we have to push them along, but it's not something that we need to spend money right now out of our budget. So thanks for that update, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think it's you, Nancy.
Okay, yep. It is time for the Franklin Sportsman's update from Jim German. If you're on the call. If Jim's not, has anyone seen Jim on the call?
I don't think
I
Jim's
don't
here.
see Jim.
Okay, well, the membership's unchanged, 35 members. Their hunting season's going to close January 29th, and they have harvested 3 antlered deer and 7 antlerless deer. 8 antlerless, 8 antlerless deer. And they've, it doesn't say how many hours, but they've continued to do community service. Total of 123 hours community service.
All right.
I will say, can I mention one comment? In Franklin and Banffshire, in particular, the members of this club have noticed that they're, especially since the trail systems have gone in, a lot of people during hunting season do not, I'll say a lot of residents or people using the trails, walking their dogs, they don't wear orange. I don't know. I think, either the township or the Franklin Sportsman's Association should make more. We do put signs up there, and it does say put orange during hunting seasons, but people aren't listening. I'm not sure we should do more.
That's a good observation. I think I don't know if it's something that we can do, put something on our website, just as a reminder for our residents. Do we have a sign? I haven't looked closely, but I wonder if we have a good sign in front of these parks that say, hey, this is where hunters are here this time of year. Please wear orange coming in.
We don't have that, and we can't legislate it, but we certainly can encourage it.
The Franklin
we're not legislating. I'm just
Association
saying we
has
put it.
They do have it on their signs at the trailheads, and at Franklin, they're spread across the woods line. And but I think next year we'll make Franklin Sportsman's Association. We'll put them at any entry point to the bike trails, because that's what the dog walkers are using too. So we'll make sure we get them in front of every single trail, and we'll try to make it more bold about wearing orange.
That can only help. Sounds good.
I think it's a good idea to put on the website also. I don't remember, Jeff, if we have a trail map on the website, but if we do, or something linked to the parks, we should just remind the public to wear orange.
Oh, more than happy to do it.
Great.
All right. Good observation.
All right. So that brings up the HARB and Historical Committee report by Paul Lagasse. And I just want to mention there was no meeting on December 7th, 2021.
I just received an email from Mr. Lagasse. He offers his apologies. He's not feeling well and won't be on tonight, but will offer an updated with a future email like he's done in the past.
Okay. Dawn.
Now it's Dawn. I'd like to introduce Greg Sachs to give an update for the Pro Committee. They had their meeting on January 4th.
Hello, everyone.
Greg.
So just a few updates. So first, regarding the playground equipment, just some background on it. Jeff Eastburn, Donna D, and I met with Lions Recreation. Our meeting was to review the consideration of new playground equipment at Crossan Park. So our recommendation, the Pro Board's recommendation, is that the township hold off on this project at this time for the following reasons. Number one, while some of the playground equipment could be considered dated, it is still considered functional. So everything's, working fine. It's just, slightly dated. Number two, all of the new equipment that we went over with Lions Recreation during our meeting would require the additional cost of moving the existing equipment or removing the existing equipment. None of the stuff we looked at would actually fit into the tot lot without doing that additional work. Number three, the cost of the playground pieces that were considered ranged in price from $3,884 to $13,460. This cost would not include shipping, the moving or removal of existing pieces, and the installation of the new equipment. So we just in closing, we believe this money could be better spent on other projects at this time. It's worth revisiting maybe further on down the road when things actually are in need of replacement.
Okay,
safety issues.
Finish the, I'll let you finish your update, but I do want to comment on that because
Sure.
I have very different opinions to what you just said. But go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, we can finish on this, and then I'll move on to the other topics.
So I just disagree on so many levels. The equipment is dated, but some would argue that it's not helpful, especially that merry-go-round thing, that we can do better for our kids to replace that. And even the climbing thing can be dangerous. We can get a better climbing thing there. And this is something that would benefit all the kids in the area. So we don't have to do everything, but I would like to at least start to replace some of the pieces. And then, of course, if you're going to change the merry-go-round, you're going to have to remove the old merry-go-round. But in terms of other pieces that need to be replaced, it was just one of the rocking horses. So I just think I couldn't disagree with the PRO more than maybe I have to hear what other ideas you have. But this is a project that I still would like to move forward on. I think there's a need for it. We have a beautiful park, but we can do better by our kids to get them some better, more dated, better to play with equipment. And not everything. I mean, it's the merry-go-round we looked at and the climbing thing, whatever you call that. The rest of it is fine. But
I forget.
Perhaps we can put together a multi-year plan so that we know we have a strategy and we know what we're going to spend each year. I actually think it's a cute playground. I'm not sure what's wrong with the merry-go-round, but maybe that's dangerous or something. Anyhow, I looked at it. I went the other day and looked at it. I think it's pretty cute for young kids. It's probably not great for like 10 and older, but I'm not sure 10 and older kids really use the playground or maybe should. There's lots of other things they can do. But
what I want to do,
Greg, my thought, sorry, but just let me say my thoughts are maybe the Pro Committee can put together a multi-year plan.
So the way I look at it, the Pro Committee is helpful, and you're there to advise, and I promise I'll work with you. But what I would like to do as a board member is continue to work on this. I'll share my ideas with the Pro, but I'll bring it to the board and we'll have a vote. I would like to have a vote with the board regarding this because I do think this is, it's a long time coming. We've been talking about it as a board for years, and I don't think it should be put off any longer. Now, we can talk about budget. Maybe it's about where it comes from. Maybe it comes from some, you know, I think there's some, what do we call it? I know with some certain properties, we have some money that comes our way because of those properties. So maybe it's a budget issue and it comes out of another budget, but I think this should be done. And like I said, I'll continue to work on it. I'll talk to you about it, Greg, but then I'll bring it to the board as a board member for a vote.
Hey, Donna, is there a specific safety concern on any of those pieces that you mentioned, or is it, I'm just trying to understand if it's safety or is it budget or is it aesthetics?
So the merry-go-round, for me, is a safety concern. I know now they have it's a different configuration where you can actually sit and not. Have you ever? Do you know what they're like? They're like they were when we were kids. Like you can there's just a rod thing that you kind of hold on to for dear life. And now they actually have a plastic setup where you can actually sit in it and you can hold on the side. So it's a little more secure for the kids that are younger for the merry-go-round. And then for the I don't know if it's a merry, but you know the twirly thing. I don't know what you call it. And then the climbing, that's more of something would be more fun. It's not. I wouldn't think it's a safety issue. It's just not. It's a piece that's not used because it's just boring. This other piece would have like ropes and other things that the kids could get into and could enjoy more. And once again, we don't need them all at the same time. I think it's, for me, my priority is the twirly thing. I think we can do better with the twirly thing, and that's the $3,800 one.
Yeah, and so, I think, and we'll get into the where the money's coming from when we actually bring it to the board and vote. But there's different ways that we can pay for things, and if we're going to pay for this, it's not necessarily a pro budget item. Right. It's, you know, we can handle it the way we handled the upgrades at the park that we did this year, where it wasn't a pro budgeted item. Right. These were general fund infrastructure projects that are part of the general maintenance of the items that we have in the township. Right. You know, this is not something that is necessarily something that the pro has to worry about with their budget and what they want to do.
Right. And I'm not sure the public cares about that. But again, I'd just like to reiterate, if you can come up with a multi-year plan, Donna, and go over it with the pro committee, I don't know what I would be approving right now. So, you know, we would need
we're not approving anything right now.
Right. I understand that. Yeah, so that we can have a view. And again, I really think, you know, just talking about a climbing wall, well, do we want it to be a climbing wall where older kids can appreciate it? Or is it just for 4- and 5-year-olds? You know, we have a lot to learn before we go any further.
I don't know about that, but I will come back to you with a plan so that you know exactly what you would be approving. So I promise to do that. And we've actually started some of that work already by meeting the gentleman at the playground. We can show you what the equipment is, what the cost is, and what group that would play to. So let me do that. But unless the PRO has an objection to why this is not a good idea in terms of it's detrimental to the park or it's doing something negative, I plan to continue to do it, to work on this. So go ahead, Greg.
No, I mean, just to follow that, I don't think it's detrimental. I just think it's spending on something that doesn't need replacement. I mean, that's our recommendation. You know, obviously we recommend and you guys make your decisions, but yeah, the entire pro board was on board with holding off on this at this time.
So Jeff, can I just ask, Jeff, has anyone been hurt, and does anybody have young kids and you can put an opinion in? Because from adults' perspective, we may look at it one way. Kids may think it's awesome. I don't know. But Jeff, anyhow, have we had any complaints about the equipment?
I wouldn't say we've had complaints from the public. That center wheel, trying to be careful what I say, has been a concern of the insurance company. Okay. Just because they'd like to see something different there, something that has I don't know what the proper term is. I call it like a brake retarder. It will only go so fast. And if we put in the piece of equipment that Donna had suggested, it's a more inclusive piece, not only for able-bodied children, but also for handicapped children as well.
Okay, so that's pretty good information.
Yep, and the
Yeah,
other
and-
thing, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead, Jeff.
Greg. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, finish it.
The other thing that I can report on, the rock and rods do get used a lot, to the point where the heavy duty springs have actually broken and we've had to replace them. But that climbing structure in the corner doesn't seem to be used much. The tire swing gets used a great deal. That tire swing, the tire itself will need to be replaced. It's just because it's worn out. So I'm getting a price on that. And that center unit, I always try and keep an eye on, because over the years I've found the support brackets breaking, and I have been able to twist the manufacturer's arm to give us free ones so far. And when we do see them, we do replace them on that green center unit.
So I was just going to say, just to give more information on the spinning wheel that you guys called it, the replacement piece that we looked at was called a 10 spin. And as Donna said, that is the lower cost item. That's the $3,884 item. And that's just to buy the item, again, not shipping. And he did mention that to install that, we would have to move one of those spring ride, whatever the actual term was, one of those would have to move to give the safety requirements. So that one, that would be the easiest out of the group to be installed. Yeah.
And that's because the fall zones change depending on the equipment. So that's why it would have to be taken out. And if we decide to do that, we can always keep one in reserve for a replacement of another when it breaks, when or if it breaks.
And if anyone wants to look, I mean, if you just Google or go on YouTube, you can type in 10 spin, and that's the actual piece will come up. You can see what we're actually talking about. So if there's no other comments or questions, I can move on to the other updates. All right, so just a couple volunteer updates. One, this past Monday, I did a trash cleanup at Franklin Preserve. Removed, a bunch of trash, some tires, old mailbox, some other stuff. I wanted to thank Jeff for assisting in getting some of the bigger items out of there. And then on top of that, Steve, our invasive plant volunteer, has continued working on invasive plant management along the woods edge at Crossan Park. So that's all I had. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Greg, for cleaning that up. That's perhaps something we can all get involved in. That's a good project for the board to go clean some of these parks.
Yeah, and there's still, I only got so far on my own on the trail at Franklin. There's still a lot of trash, bigger items the further you go down the trail, which is north. And we're still planning on, there's a bunch of tree tubes down there that we're planning on also dealing with. That's just, it's harder without, a truck or something nearby that you can throw them in. I tried, and you can only carry so many tree tubes, a good amount, so.
And I'll tell you, I'm not a great Facebook person, but after I had to learn it, I have so appreciated seeing Greg's stuff up there, because I think it inspires other people. I was so happy to see that you had done that just all on your own initiative. And I think it's gonna encourage other people just to, maybe do that too. I don't know. I mean, I have that piece of property down from me and we have tires and stuff that I drag out. So I applaud you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Don.
Well,
You're
I'm
awesome,
happy to
Greg. Thank you.
schedule, yeah, I'm happy to Jeff, if you want to propose a day, I'm happy to come, and I bet the rest of the board will too. I think it really says a lot to the community that we care enough about the parks to keep them clean.
Sure, and we could take the township truck out, and we also have the gator for more remote areas. So I'm sure we can get it done.
That'd be terrific.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to take part in that. So
All right,
Thank
great.
you,
Jeff.
everyone.
Greg.
Include the
Thanks, Greg.
FSA in
Appreciate
that
it.
request too, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so comp plan meeting. There was a meeting on December 28th. Kathy, are you on the call?
No, but I do have an update from her, Nancy.
Thanks, Jeff.
We did talk this evening.
Okay.
And I will read her update, as she calls it, her script, as she was laughing. The comp plan task force will meet next Tuesday, January 25th, to review the first draft of the comprehensive plan. We are very excited to announce that we received the draft plan this evening. We wish to publicly thank Janine and her colleagues at the Chester County Planning Commission. The draft plan will be made available on the township website tomorrow, and physical copies will be made available to the public upon request. Just like every other task force meeting that has been held, we invite every member of our shared and cherished community to attend and participate. See you at the next meeting, Kathy.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, Jeff, I did see that you're extending the contract to what, September 30th with them?
Yes, September 30th. That was at the recommendation recommendation suggestion of Mr. Dukefoy. I can never pronounce his name.
William,
correctly.
yeah.
So it was at his recommendation, did send it in. We do have the paperwork to sign, which we can do next month. So we're still on track and everyone's motivated to get it done.
Yeah, so the salient point here about this contract extension is there is no extra money being spent. There's no extra funds being spent. It's really, they have paperwork that needs to be in alignment with the timeline of their project. So their original timeline was ending in March, and for a number of reasons, they weren't going to be able to hit that timeline. So we need to sign a contract extension for them to allow them to work. And it's simply a bookkeeping effort. So the township isn't spending any more money or anything like that. It's mostly a bureaucratic exercise. So that's all we have for the comp plan.
I'll move on to the planning commission. So
Yeah.
I know there was a meeting on January 6th. Is there anyone on the planning commission that could update us?
Yeah, I'm John Gontars.
Hi,
We had our meeting on the 6th. And the people in attendance were Dave Hoffman, Mark Harris, Chuck Phillips, Matt Goyne, myself, Zach Elwin, and Jeff Eastburn. There was no public comment. We approved the minutes of the previous meeting of December 2nd. Then we had our organizational discussion. Dave Hoffman was nominated and carried 5-0 to be the chairman. Likewise, Mark Harris is the vice chairman with a vote of 5-0. And I was selected to be the secretary with a vote of 5-0. So that's in place. When we started our discussion, first thing we discussed was the planning commission members and a number of supervisors went to the Longwood Gardens to tour their solar facility. And I think the people like what they saw. The solar facility is pretty well surrounded by grass. And from what people tell me, I've seen it a few years ago myself, there really is no runoff issues for that type of facility. And we thought it was pretty good. And if something like that is put in the township, we can see that as being a benefit. I sent out to the, since that meeting, I sent out to the Planning Commission, a couple of Board of Supervisors members, a copy of a document I found online talking about solar trees. And it was quite interesting. It was really solar panels up high, pointing in different directions. And that is something, unfortunately, I think we have the capability to accept in the township, but it just gives you an idea of where the technology is going. It's going a lot different from where it is now in a number of areas. In our discussions, one of the things that we really focused on was the end of life disposition of solar arrays, or if the solar arrays get damaged. We realize we have to deal with that, but it's largely the landowner, homeowner's responsibility for that. Because we don't want those things broken and being washed away with rainwater and then having that soak into the groundwater, as many of us in the township do have wells, and the cost of remediation of something like that could be pretty significant. So that's something that we will be focusing on even more. Let's see. We're going to be reviewing it some more in February 3rd at the next Planning Commission meeting, and hopefully we'll have that in pretty good shape to present. Let's see. That's about it for that. We discussed the comprehensive plan a little bit. We're going to be reviewing that. There was no public comments, and we closed the meeting at 7:39. So it was a relatively short meeting, focusing largely on the solar panels and the restaffing of the positions on the Planning Commission. Okay. Any questions?
It's good to hear that you're making progress on the green ordinance. I know it's been going on for a while, and it's been back. You had it, we had it, the board had it, we gave it back to you. So it sounds like we're closing in, hopefully on a good place, and we should be getting it the board soon, maybe in March.
I think the biggest thing that we've realized is we can't have a rigid ordinance because the technology is changing so rapidly. And we have to make provisions, which we've tried to do in the ordinance, to allow the supervisors to allow for this new technology to come in place. Because 5 years from now, it's going to be a different picture than it is today. Yeah. So it has to be a flexible picture, I think. Okay.
Thank you. That sounds good. Thank you.
John.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I think just as some color to this is when, I don't know if we've discussed the solar panel ordinance at a board meeting to talk about this, amendment that we made to it, but essentially we have a series of guidelines for what people should be able to do now with the solar panels. And the Planning Commission quickly realized that things change very rapidly. So we added a piece at the end that simply says, I forget the exact wording, John, but it's something like if your plan falls outside of this current jurisdiction or current ordinance, come to the board and discuss your plan, and we can grant you a waiver. And hopefully, as things evolve, that'll help inform us to change our ordinance in a timely fashion if people start coming to us and saying, solar trees are the new thing or whatever it is. So we're trying to make it easy for people who might want to do something different to come to the board and talk about what they're trying to do.
And actually, David, we talked about this at our last township meeting, and the terminology was non-conforming solar installations or new approach solar installations. So, and I think it was John's idea. It's a nice addition to the ordinance to give some flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any other questions for John or the Planning Commission? All right, moving on to business. Thank you, John. All right, so the 2022 revised budget discussion. I don't have anything to really talk about with the revised budget. Is Melissa still on? But I can give you a quick note. We, because we have two new supervisors, We were allowed to open the budget again for review to allow the new supervisors to look at and comment on the budget and suggest any major changes. I don't believe we've made any major changes. I don't know if Jim or Don have any concerns with the budget as it currently stands.
I was involved. I'll say I was involved with the original budget presentation, and then I do have a copy of the final. And I think there was just one small thing that carried back to last year. Was it 42,000 or something like that for one of the fire departments? That's it.
It was the quarter 3. It was the quarter 3 payment for one of the fire departments for $43,000
Right, right,
that Joan wasn't able to make before her departure.
Okay.
right. And Melissa, we agreed that the excess money we were holding back last year for snow, we didn't need. And so that is going into a general fund. Where's that going again?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's about 30,000. And I think you moved it, I think I asked you about it, and you moved it to a general type fund.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So we're good. So do we, I guess, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question too. Dave and I talked about this a little bit this afternoon, but I'm looking again at this letter that we got. I'm so worried about the closing of the hospital. The letter, if you looked at that letter, said, we are now working on an addendum to the agreement. And I know that'll come up after in my next thing I have. Do you want to talk about it then?
So Dawn, thank you for bringing that up, because I had the same exact thought that you just articulated, because we do have in our current budget the amount of money that has been requested for us, and that was an increase from last year. So Melissa has already covered that. But the unknown that we don't know is, does the addendum mean they were going to want additional funds? Or is it more of an issue about how we need to behave in this new world? So I agree. I don't know.
Yeah, I did talk to Dave this afternoon, and he can talk about it a little bit more, because I did say that was something that really worried me. And now I read again in the letter that they're now working on an addendum. But once we approve the money, I don't know that we can offer them more, or they could ask for more.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can always ask for more. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. But the question is, you can't, how do you budget for unforeseen expenses?
Right.
The general question that I had, my assumption, and it might be a wrong assumption, but is in a case where there's an emergency, you can, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to pull it out of another fund like the general fund and say, West Grove Fire Company, for example,
Right.
has a fiscal issue, and in order for us to continue service, we need to pay them X amount of money. We'd have to agree to, as a board, I think, to make an amendment to that financing. I don't know. I don't think we're held, right? I don't know if we are held to whatever it is we agreed to pay them at the beginning. But like as far as the budget line item goes, I think we can pull the money out of the general fund.
Yeah, and we had talked about that. So, I mean, I feel comfortable with that. I just didn't know whether this letter shed any light on that.
Well, I guess we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what they're going to ask for until they come to us and ask for some more money, right?
Yeah.
And we don't even know if they're going to ask for more money. It could be an addendum due to something else.
Right.
I mean, we don't know. So.
Okay, I'll take it away in the next motion then.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So we don't have to do a motion to close the budget again. if we reopened it, we don't have to make a motion to close it again, I guess.
Mark can chime in on this, but the way it was advertised, it was going to be open and discussed tonight. If there were any changes, they would be available for inspection by the 24th, and then possible approval on February 7th. But can you talk to that, Mark? Can they close it tonight and be done with it?
You can if you're, I apologize, if you're not making any changes, then you don't have to do anything further as far as advertisement goes or closing the budget, so to speak. You've discussed it. You've decided to leave it as is, and that's the end of the matter.
So no motion required.
No motion.
Okay.
All right.
You've already passed the budget.
All right. Good enough.
Okay. So then I'll move to the next item, and I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-04, authorizing the firm of Barbacane, Thornton and Company to conduct the 2021 Franklin Township audit.
I'll second that. Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, people won't be surprised to know this is something I've been interested in. I'll just share my viewpoint. I'm not going to vote in support of using them again, and I'll just share the reasons why. We've used them 6 years. This would be the 7th, and this all started because we were told best practice was to switch occasionally. And last year we discussed it, and I was particularly concerned because, fair or not fair, they had been involved with problems in Kennett. So it just made me look at them a little more closely. What I learned, and we were told last year that they came in to fix the problems. That actually wasn't the case. They were the firm that had worked with the township until the company Maley came in. And that's how I learned about Maley, is because I looked to say, well, who fixed the problems? I'm not saying fix, but who started auditing in Kennett after the issues were identified? They didn't keep their former auditor. They switched to a new auditor. So I looked at that, and then I've been looking at, well, what would it mean? Would it be more complicated? Would it be more difficult? Well, first, we would get a much more experienced auditor. We know that with BT, we get young people out of school, which is fine. But we also know that with a different firm, if we select a firm that offers that, we get an auditor that has 20 years direct experience in municipal townships and probably does audits for, I'm going to say, at least a dozen other townships near us. So I thought that was compelling. And then I just wondered, is it going to cost more? We talked about that. It's not going to cost more. We didn't have much luck with the former auditor getting good ideas. And when Melissa came, and we now have Peter, we're getting a lot of really good ideas. We, as a board, we didn't really understand what was going on. And I'll say that collectively, because I don't think any of us really knew that we could change manual processes to automated processes, that the person who was opening the bank statements was also the person reconciling them, which was done manually. One person knew everything. We spent weeks just trying to figure out codes and passwords after that person left. So we didn't necessarily know as much as we probably should have. And I think that's our job, first and foremost, is to manage our community's money properly. I'm not saying anything has been done improperly. It hasn't. But I am saying that there were a lot of improvements that could have been made that weren't. And I don't know if just the person at the township just asked not to do those changes. I don't really know. All I know is I've been involved for 3 years, and the only change that was ever made was when I kept insisting that it was uncomfortable at best to have the one person doing all three jobs: treasurer, bookkeeper, and manager. And so last year, Barbacane said, well, maybe you should have someone else look at reconciliations. And Donna just kindly offered to do it. There was nothing that we discussed that we put in writing. There was no process that we agreed to. So I looked at that and I said, well, I think we can improve. And then finally, people are concerned that it might take more work. So I looked into that, and essentially an audit is, as everyone probably knows, you look at your internal controls and your processes, and then you look at you do a statistical review of bank statements and revenue and expense, purchase recs. All of that work is going to be done by any auditor. There's no difference as to the amount of workload for the staff. Frankly, no one on our staff was involved in a previous audit anyhow. Jeff was peripherally, but I don't think Jeff got involved. And then finally, well, maybe the old auditor knows our processes. Well, every single process has changed. So, to me, it's like, well, what is the upside of not looking at things differently, seeing what we can learn, just putting a stamp on our comfort level and knowing that we've done everything we can do. So I'm a big fan of changing auditors, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Maybe I'll just make a comment. So, Nancy, I'm not against it. What I would like to do is have 3 candidates. So we've had Melly come in, and we had an interesting presentation. I thought he was very impressive. We have Barbacane, Thornton, and we'll be working, well, depending on how this vote goes, working with them on this current audit, and then have a third party come in. And I think then we can make a decision whether we want to change.
Donna, why do you want a third party?
It's just that I always work in groups of 3. I mean, when I do an estimate, I always do 3. A lot of times you don't know where you stand, the high and the low. It's kind of when you have 3, you get a sense of where
it's not financial, right? This isn't a financial discussion. And when it comes to audits, finances have nothing to do with it. It's a company, it's our township's job to pick the best auditor, not financially. Do you have someone in mind, Donna, that you would like to bring in?
Yeah, I use the concept of when I get an estimate, so that's the fun. But no, you're right. It's not, cost will be a part of it, but it's more in terms of who's going to do the better job. So I agree. But once again, I always like to talk to 3 people because then I get a sense of how they're approaching it. And a lot of times you're different.
Who would you like to bring in? We can just set it up.
Well, I'm sorry, Donna, are you talking about for the 2021 audit, or are you talking about after this audit is complete?
Oh, after that. So once again, maybe I should be, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear enough. I am not against changing auditors, but not this year. I still think that right now, because we made so many changes, there's some benefit having Barbacane Thornton do this audit, because
that's what we said last year. There's certain human nature doesn't like change. And I think that saying every year, maybe not this year, why not? It doesn't, Barbacane Thornton knows nothing more about our processes than any other auditor. Now, if you have an auditor, bring it forward. But you've been saying that for months and you haven't brought anyone forward. So who's
Nancy, can I say something? That's not true, because for the most of the year, we had the old process going in 2021.
And how is that going to help us now?
Because Barbacane Thornton knew exactly what the internal controls were then, and they're going to see the change of internal controls this year. I don't disagree with much of what you said, and I'm on the same page that we should probably look at a couple different auditors for next year's audit for 2022.
Yeah.
But for
that's
21,
what we heard last year.
And I'm not sure what timing you're talking about, but if you're talking about the November meeting, that's what we were saying in November, but or
no,
maybe
it was last January or February. Dave and Mary came in and said, hey, we really should look at a different auditor. And that's when we were misled into believing that Barbacane Thornton was involved after the issues were discovered. So that came off the table. It just seems like year after year, it is, to me, it's much more dangerous to just continue doing what we've always done than to open the doors, open the books, and understand. None of us really understood what was going on.
So right. So again, I think I'm probably sitting with Jim and Don on this one. And the reason for me is I'm just talking to the staff, right? So talking to the staff, and they support for now. The comment to me was, granted, last year we had a situation where, no one wanted to change. And then this year we've changed everything. We basically turned over the front office. We have a completely new treasurer and a completely new bookkeeper. and both of them have expressed interest in not making any further changes until they get their feet under them. And so my perspective is I'm going to defer to the people who are actually going to work with the auditor. And my commitment now is, likely this is the last year that Barbacane Thornton is going to be our auditor, because I also in agreement with you, Nancy, we need to make a change, but I also don't want to overload our staff, which are all very new and are asking me, I don't want to change this year because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. And adding more chaos will cause a problem. So everything you're saying is not wrong, right? But we're in a situation where we created a whole bunch of change, right? We created a whole bunch of change, and to institute one more, that's where I fall, is I'm going to talk to the people who are going to deal with the auditors, and I'm going to assess their comfort level.
Thanks, Dave. And I did talk to the staff as well. 3/4 of the audit won't change for them, no matter which auditor we use. So the thing that would change is when we explain our processes, our controls. Those were one way and now they're another. Barbacane Thornton is going to have to learn all the new ways anyhow. We're going to have to write down everything, both the past and the present, because everything starts over each year. No one can use any of the old bank statements, any of the old revenue statements, nothing carries over. The only thing that carries over is if you have similar processes, which we don't. So I asked the staff just to look into it, and I got various responses, and I understand, but also just remember, the buck stops with us. We are the ones held accountable for any I don't want to say malfeasance, but anything that we do financially, it's our responsibility, not the staff's. And so I totally understand what you're saying. I just think every single person would say a year from now, you know what, that was a good change. I truly believe that there's more concern than I think is warranted. But so that's fine.
I just want to say one more thing too. I think from what I understand, Barbacane would also present to us this year in the audit someone that's a way more senior level than even has been in previous years, in maybe even the partner to do most of the work, which I guess would be very helpful for our staff, number one. And then I want to say one thing. I know, Dave, you said that we need change. I'd rather look at this like we need to do an assessment and see who the best auditor is for Franklin Township. It might still be Barbacane. I don't know anybody there. I don't have any. I just say we just need to do an assessment and figure it out. And I like Donna's idea of at least 3 people, because we know a little bit about Barbacane. We don't know, we don't want to just bring one other one in and think they're the best. I just rather have at least a couple more when we do our assessment.
Jim, do you want to bring someone in? No one wants to bring anyone in.
I can look into that. You can put it on me. I'm fine with that. I will do that, and I'll bring it up probably soon after the audit is complete, when audit season's over, and the other audit firms have time to come in.
That sounds good. It's disappointing that Barbacane Thornton never brought anyone senior in until we started complaining. To me, that's not a sign of a very well-managed company.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I've been doing this a long time, and when things start to go smoothly, the juniors have always put in.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something, when you think about how we changed our financial controls this year, Jim, it's like we don't everyone's different. It's totally new. It's a totally new office. And so I think this is a good test for Barbacane Thornton as well, to see how they handle it in real time. And then in the meantime, I think, Jim, we'll call you and make sure that you get that third person in, and we can actually have a conversation about options, because it's,
We'll definitely talk about it.
I'm sure Barbacane Thornton is scrambling. I think their reputation has been pretty bruised, and so I'm sure they're trying to raise their game, which is great.
So I would just like to point out a major control change for Franklin Township. And that is the treasurer, Peter and Penny, coming in doing all the account. They're reconciling all the accounts where I'm not doing that. So there's a different control change.
Mhm.
So as prior, when Joan was doing all that, so now we have an addition to a control change. So now they're backing up everything that I'm like doing. So that's something different than the township has had in years.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
think we're
right, Melissa. Most of your controls have changed because there's not a single person who's in the same position, not a
I
single
think-
one.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we're in, from a financial control situation. I mean, I'm not an accountant, so maybe I'm way wrong, but I think we've done a really nice job this year with the checks and balances, right? You know, no pun intended, that we have 3 different people, right, that are looking at things, and so our treasurer is outside of the township, right? It's
Right.
someone that
So
we've hired.
actually we have four control people now, whereas when Joan was there, we had 3. So now we've added an additional person.
Yeah, it's all
I think what-
good. I mean,
Yeah, I
it
think
is,
what Dave
it
is
is
trying to
all
explain
better.
to is there's a segregation of duties that didn't exist
Mhm.
before.
Yes,
That's the term audit uses.
And
yeah.
it bothers me that they never
Exactly.
said to us, you know, you could kind of change your segregation of duties. You know, it's not best practice to have one person do everything. And I
Exactly.
kept asking them each year, you know,
Yeah.
why is this?
Yeah. And I can honestly say when I stepped into that role, I wasn't comfortable either. So
Right. Yeah, some of the changes were due to the staff that we have in place now, right? But it's working out well. So
It's
Yes.
fantastic. It's way
yeah,
better,
very
way
well.
better.
yeah. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Then I guess all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay.
Opposed, on record, I don't think we're doing everything possible to have total management over our finances.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, now we have to talk about more money. It's to talk about the West Grove Fire Company agreement. Do we have any discussion before I make a motion? Because we agreed to pay $127,882.77 for the fire company and $51,538.84 for the ambulance, and that would be paid on a quarterly basis. And do I have any discussion about that?
How about I
Yes.
second your motion first on? So I'll second that motion.
Yeah.
Is that okay? And then we can discuss
That's
it.
fine. I guess I put the cart before the horse, but yes, thank you for the second. I guess there's no discussion. All in favor?
No, let's just say a quick note on this. It's a lot of money. It's a big check. It's a big check that we write every year. You know, this is our EMS service and this is our fire department, right? And so, you know, one of the things that people don't realize when their house is on fire or they need an ambulance is that there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes to get that truck there, to get that ambulance there, to make sure that you and your family stay safe. And these are very expensive units to run. And you know, over the past year or so, I've spent a lot of time learning about that and sitting through their budget meetings. And this West Grove in particular is a very well-run organization. They come to us with their budgets, they explain it very clearly. And so residents should feel pretty confident that they do a very nice job managing the money that we give them to provide the services they provide. So it's a big check, but they do a very nice job.
No, I feel very good about it. I'm just really concerned that it's not going to be enough because of this situation, you know. That was the only thing I was worried about. Do you know anybody that you could talk to about that letter? And does
Yeah,
anybody?
we can reach out to West Grove and talk to we can talk to them about any potential increase.
Yeah.
But when they came to us, we had this conversation last year. The closing of Jennersville wasn't a surprise, and so they made some adjustments, I think, already in anticipation of that closure. So we are paying. So the increase that we're seeing this year, beyond just the regular inflationary increase, is already that closure is already baked in. So if there's an amendment, it's going to be something that they didn't see in an additional cost that they didn't see post closure.
Right.
Because one of the things that I learned was some of the troubles they have, particularly with EMS, which is what we talk about when we talk about the closure of Jennersville, is most patients didn't want to go to Jennersville.
Right.
Most patients were when they got into the ambulance, they were like, take me to Christiana, take me to Chester, take me. And so they were, so that was already an increased cost that they were seeing, is that their turnaround time was quite long.
Right.
So,
well, I remember too, from the discussion that I had seen when the guy gave us the talk, that they bought some of their supplies also from Jennersville. And didn't they work out of Jennersville Hospital?
Yeah, I think that's true. They were actually buying some stuff from them, and they were able to store some stuff. But I think they were working with other groups to figure out an alternative approach.
Okay.
I think we have to trust them, right, and just see where it comes from. Like you said, David, we talked to them towards the end of last year, where these additional costs were already in the discussion regarding Jennersville. But if they come to us with a reasonable approach, I mean, we need this service.
Right.
They explain to us why they need additional money, or what additional support they need from us. And of course, we're going to be open and hear it, right? And then we can decide. But this is an important service for our residents. We have to figure out a way how to support them.
Well, I suppose then if we would sign this, then we could just sign this and then see what they come back with, unless you want to talk to them first.
well, I think we can approve this tonight. Yeah, we can approve this tonight, and then any additional increase we can talk about at a future meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All opposed? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. So I'll move to the next item on the agenda, and because of Jim's election, we had a auditor's position vacant, and we've at the last meeting agreed to do some advertisement, and we were fortunate enough to have Lynn Weber be one of the folks that applied for the position. Just as John knows Lynn, I know Lynn also from numerous years and her working on the school board. She has a CPA. That's her experience, and she's worked in this area for a number of years. As I said, I know her from the school board. I know that in that capacity, she was always well prepared for the meetings, asked insightful questions, particularly when it came to the budget or any expenditures that were being progressed by the school board. And she often was challenged quite a bit in her questioning, but stood her ground and did an excellent job. And I think she would make an excellent addition to the auditors group. Now, I realize that the auditors don't do the auditing. We as we just talked about before, we were going to work with another company, but the auditors, we do sometimes ask for their opinions, and it's nice to have folks that are well trained in this area that we can talk if we have questions that we can go to.
So
yeah, John, I'm glad you mentioned that, and that is absolutely true. They meet once a year. At their meeting in January, they elect a secretary, and then if the supervisors are requesting an increase, which I don't think we've ever done, then they discuss that. That is their formal, that's all they're formally responsible for. If a board member wants to talk to them about their opinions, that's great, but their opinions cannot change our decision. They can only inform it.
Yeah, so there's four basic, so in the second class township code, there are four basic functions of an elected auditor. And the first one is they have the organizational meeting like all of our boards do. The second is how Nancy was referring to was the Board of Auditors audits the township. And that's kind of an artifact before townships started hiring external auditors. And so we replaced that function with Barbacane Thornton or another accounting firm. And so what happens is, this is sort of an old, I guess it's an artifact of an older time when we didn't have these auditing firms that we could hire. So in the case that the board loses confidence in our auditing firm, or the auditing firm can't for some reason conduct the audit, we would call upon the elected auditors to do the audit for us. So they have that ability if called upon for $10 an hour. So we might want to consider that instead of using Barbacane. I don't know if Lynn would like to work for $10 an hour or not, but that's what we're going to pay you. The auditors can, as also Nancy brought it up, the only function that Barbacane doesn't do is if we want an increase in spending, or increase in salary, our salary, which we're limited anyway in Article 606 or Section 606. I think the most we can make is like $1,800 a year. And then finally, they have the authority to audit judiciaries. So they actually, I thought this was kind of interesting. So if the Board of Auditors for some reason needs to audit a district court, they can audit district court documents to look for any, to audit the finances of fines to and from Franklin Township. So those are the four basic authorities of the auditors. And the real functional one would be the auditing of the township, which we outsource right now. So hopefully, in an ideal world, the elected auditors have very little to do in any given year. It's only in a case of a disaster, for lack of a better word, that we would call them in and say, okay, we need someone to audit our books. So that being said, the office was open because we have to have 3, and Jim can't be a supervisor and an auditor. So we advertised and we got 1 resume. So thank you, Lynn, for stepping up and offering your services. So that's really all I wanted to say, is just trying to describe what an elected auditor is and what they do and why they exist. Don or Jim, do you have any comments before we move to voting?
So I never made the motion, but after Dawn and Jim make their comments, I'll totally make the motion. That was my fault. I started talking about Lynn and I forgot to make the motion. So I'll wait till Jim and Dawn finish their comments and I can actually make the formal motion if that's how we want to go.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing about the second class code, and that does allow for the outsourcing. I know you mentioned it, David, but that is actually written in the second class code too. That's one of the one of the options that we have as a board. And then as far as Lynn is concerned, I've known her for a couple of years too, mainly for the school board. I have a bunch of kids that were in the school district and still are in some respects. And I mean, she has her CPA. She's worked in accounting for 26 years. She's been in management for 22 of them. I don't think we can get a better person to be one of our auditors.
Dawn, any comments from you?
I really don't know her, so I didn't want to make any comment.
No problem. I didn't want to talk over you if you were going to say. So let me formally make the motion, and then we'll see where we go from there. So I make a motion to appoint Lynn Weber as an elected auditor for Franklin Township. Could I have a second?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we've had a discussion, but any more discussion?
No.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Great, so motion carries 5-0. Lynn, welcome aboard.
All right, congratulations, Lynn. Thank you for stepping up and applying. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the Abel subdivision plan and document withdrawal request. So this is something that the board has done. You can set your clock to it every, was it 6 months or so? I felt like.
Yes.
And this was basically a subdivision plan where a property owner had put in the plan, didn't execute it, but wanted to keep it alive in case they wanted to ever actually execute the plan. And, you know, just as a favor, we kept extending it. And finally, I think they've just said enough's enough. Let's just drop it. So we just need to make a motion to approve the withdrawal request for the Abel subdivision plan. So I will make a motion to approve the withdrawal request for the Abel subdivision plan. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Any discussion? I'm gonna miss it. I'm so used to talking about this. All in favor?
Finally done it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 5-0. End of an era.
Okay, AECOM letter, January 12th. This is regarding Lexington Point. I guess we need to make a motion. Mark, do you want to talk about the AECOM letter itself? I think it's just about who we're going to be using, who they are going to be using to help us with the sewer system that's going in at Lexington Point. So is there anything else, Mark?
This is part of the, you know, if we want to talk about things that have been ongoing, Lexington Point, the agreement that the board approved last year, there are certain items that need to be satisfied before we finally execute that agreement. And a couple of those are a proposed contractor. Now, there was a previous contractor, Pikeland Construction, that was approved by the township, and Pikeland has gone out of business. So they've now proposed a new contractor. They proposed a schedule with periods of review. And Stan Corbett, the township's sewage engineer, has reviewed those and finds them acceptable, and is looking for the township to approve those items. I believe you have some proposed motions.
Yeah, I'll read through the three items, I guess.
But if Stan's okay with them, then that's good enough for me.
Okay, so I'll read through the three items from Stan. 1, approving the MGK Industries, Inc. and Lee Rain, Inc. as contractors to construct the wastewater facilities at Lexington Point. 2, asking for separate 14-day periods for both design, engineer, and AECOM review, with a note indicating no shop drawing revisions and resubmissions are assumed. 3, schedule should be revised to indicate AECOM shop drawing reviews commencing after the date of township approval. So I need a second on that motion. That's my motion, that the board approve. Okay. Thanks, Donna. So I probably mangled that a little bit, but we are approving Stan's recommendations, which are the 3 items we just talked about.
Correct.
So Donna seconded it. Does anyone have any more discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries 5-0.
I just want to comment, this is like momentous occasion, right, Mark? I mean, we're actually making, concrete progress here on this facility. This has been years and years in the making. So I just keep my fingers crossed, and I know we trust Stan and we trust his recommendation, but this is a big momentous occasion from a Lexington Point perspective, and I hope it continues to progress.
Donna, you are correct. The project is moving forward, at least from the perspective of the applicant providing the necessary information in order to finalize the agreement. That is the agreement ultimately that will bind the township and the developer to construct the amended wastewater treatment facility, which the development needs. If you want me to just go right into that discussion concerning solicitor updates, I would think now that we've got the issues settled as far as the contractors and the schedule, I understand Stan Corbett will need to review what's called the shop drawings for the proposed system. But in lieu of those, I think we can, we will look to try to finalize the agreement, hopefully for the February meeting, so that it can be executed, depending on how long Stan takes to review that. I understand that process can be a little bit of back and forth, but that is where the status of that is. We have a proposal for additional financial security that the applicant has agreed to, and we will need to finalize and approve those at the next meeting and execute them. So that is moving forward as far as we are concerned, Stan and I. Unless the board has any questions, I can move on to the next item. Hearing none. 3327 Appleton Road. This is the property owned by the DeFrancesco Appleton Trust. We submitted our briefs last month, and I think Mr. DeFrancesco might have submitted his in October. So we are now in a position where we're waiting to hear from the court on argument and ultimate disposition of the appeal. This is concerning the demolition permit that the township had denied last year. So that's basically in the same position it was last month. The third item. Oh, go ahead.
So I don't know if we talked about it at the last meeting, but there was someone who was interested in buying the property, and that's kind of fallen apart. Is that part of the brief? Does the judge, or does the judge even care that people are trying to buy this property and they're not being successful? Does that play?
I guess maybe that was an anecdotal, like someone heard something around the township. I don't want to get in. I'm not aware of the particulars of the deal or of the proposal, but I know that someone did approach Jeff to ask for, the township's, well, let's just say that it's not uncommon for potential buyers to just ask for information from the township. So I think that's where we kind of got a sense that someone may be looking into purchasing the property. We understood, and it was stated on the record during that appeal, that it was on the market. I haven't looked actively recently, but I understand it still is on the market from Mr. DeFrancesco's counsel. So that the brief is really limited to the information that was presented to the board at the hearing. So that was quite some time ago. I think that was back in April. So we are limited to that information. If something were to come up, if some factual situation were to change drastically, we would have the ability to motion the court and inform them of that. But I think we're kind of in a holding pattern, at least as it is with respect to issues concerning the condition of the property and whether or not it remains on the market, whether or not it's been sold. So that's the current state of affairs with respect to that appeal.
Thanks.
The HARB had asked for some changes. Paul Lagasse had set forth some changes and asked us to put those into ordinance format. They were just simply in text. So we will have that ready for the board to review by the next meeting. They weren't utterly substantial changes. I think they were just looking to clean up a few items in the ordinance concerning their ability to review these properties that come in for certificates of appropriateness. And then the final issue under my update is the Crown Castle cell tower Crossan Park agreement. And as the board is aware, we do rent the cell tower, the space for the cell tower to Crown Castle. And that agreement is due to expire on the 3rd of August, 2024. Crown Castle has approached the township with an offer. It was initially a low offer. We rejected it. We had sent an email last week with the particulars of the new offer with some recommendations. I wouldn't want to go through them at this point because we haven't finalized that agreement. But I would urge the board to review the information. I think Mr. Eastburn has it, and we can certainly talk about a renewal. They had offered a signing bonus, and we think that we could do better than that. Let's put it that way. So I think they're looking for a 20-year renewal. And I know that it's not up soon, but in order for them to market that tower, they need to have some extra time. I don't think any other carriers are willing to put their equipment on a tower that has a lease that's going to expire in a short period of time. We do get rent payments based on a percentage of what Crown Castle gets from the carriers that are on their tower. So that is in the works, and hopefully we will be able to finalize that in the next month or two.
So Mark, can we just give you the okay to continue to negotiate? I've read the letter. I agree. I mean, we think that, I mean, do you need a vote, or can we just say?
No, yes? I don't think we're at that point just yet. I would suggest that, we have, if we have an executive session coming up, then we can talk about it. It is something that, since it's a property matter, we have the ability to discuss that and finalize those terms outside of the scope of a public meeting.
Right, we just wanted to bring this to the board's attention. And then, Mark, I think it's Helen Mountain from your office that would be working on this too. So she's always been fantastic in the past with these types of things.
Yeah, Helen is an attorney that has been working on the township's behalf with Crown Castle. And to be honest, she has kept them honest over the years. They are required to present certain reports to the township. And she has been very diligent in pursuing those reports and ensuring that the township is getting every penny under the lease. So she will continue to do that, and she's taking the lead on this negotiation. So I think if we can work with Jeff, I think we might get to a point where we feel like we've got the best terms. And then, we can discuss it with the board, but right now we're in the midst of that.
Yeah, I have a quick question on how they came up with the rent price. Is it all based on how much money they get from their subscribers or lease, their tenants, or however they call themselves? Or does the value of the land it sits on have any play in what we get in terms of rent, right? So if this was in the middle of nowhere, is it a cheaper tower than it's someplace that's, say, in a public park or on property that's increasing in value?
Well, every tower to a provider has a value because it's taking up a space where they need to have cell service coverage. So we don't necessarily look at the value of the land, but I mean, that goes into the calculation of the value that a carrier would place. If we've kind of have a little dead zone down here that this tower serves, and it's necessary for other carriers to be on this tower. So that because of that, we've got a couple more co-locations. Yeah, it makes it more valuable for Crown Castle. So therefore, we would realize more rent. So it's not a per se land value, but the location of the
location matters. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, so that brings us to our final public comments. So as promised, the second public comment. This public comment can include comments on anything that you might want to share that is perhaps not on the agenda tonight. That's something you'd like us to comment on. Commenters must state their name, whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer of the township. So are there any members of the township who would like to make public comment?
Yes, John Auerbach. I'm a Franklin Township resident and taxpayer. I've got some comments on a couple of the items, and these comments are intended to be helpful and not disruptive. The one issue is related to the fire company costs and for EMS. If you remember back in, I think this was a November meeting, we talked to both of the fire companies. We talked to West Grove and Medic 94 on the phone. They had sent us requirements or suggestions for the 2022 budget. And we discussed them with them on the phone, and we accepted their costs for 2022. In fact, we even entered them into the budget that evening. So the information you approved tonight was essentially the thing we agreed to back in November for 2022. So that was a fairly well thought out discussion, and they came to us with real numbers and the reasons why they needed them. So whether you're going to need more next year, like you said, you can't predict something that's really unpredictable. So the money that you approved tonight is in the budget. It's like it's appropriate. I just proceed. The other comment is related to the auditors. I mean, long time ago, the auditors were always set up to be available to actually perform an audit if the township desired, or that the professional firm they hired was unsuitable or couldn't perform or whatever reason. So that's always been something that's been available to the townships, that the auditors could. Franklin has always been fortunate to have qualified auditors, elected auditors who are CPAs, and reality could actually conduct an audit if they had to. Hopefully they wouldn't have to, but that's really my understanding of the auditing function. The other item that was discussed briefly was the winter road maintenance budget. And the way that had been done in the past is that we had allocated $260,000 a year just because we didn't really know what the winter was going to be like. It was $200,000 for labor and then $60,000 for salt and the ice skid. And typically what would happen is if you overspent the budget, and we haven't done that in quite a few years, we would just have to take the money out of our capital road program to fund this road maintenance component. On the other hand, when we had excess money over, it was always put back into the road program, because the winter road maintenance is a road maintenance component. So the natural place was to put it back into road maintenance. The last item is related to the budget. And if you remember, we struggled to get a budget together for November, for the November deadline. And then eventually we adopted it in December without change. But without the benefit of our previous township manager and her skills, Melissa and I were able to put together a reasonable budget. But the budget that we came up with in November had a fair number of deficiencies and holes in it. And we continued to work on the budget right up to the end of this past year. And the intent was to review those changes that we made in the budget between November and the end of the year, and incorporate them into the final budget, which we reviewed in public sometime in February, I think. So the main point is that the budget that was advertised is vastly different than what we have right now. So it requires a fair review in public of the changes we made, and they're significant. So that's really all I had.
John, just to clarify, because it's actually occurred to in my mind, the budget that we approved in December is not the budget that we have now, right? So we do need to.
Absolutely, because we can after we generated that budget in November, Melissa and I, and we even got our treasurer, Peter Bars, and his assistant Tanny, and we worked on that thing right up to the end of the year, making, I would say, some significant changes. So I think it's important that you review those changes in a public meeting sometime in February so that everybody knows what we did. I think everything we did was entirely appropriate and necessary. So I don't see any problem with the budget itself, but because the changes are significant, you need to review it in public.
Yeah, so I think, David, we have to get this thing advertised again, and we have to approve it because.
Yeah, so, and we have until, so we talked about this if it came to that. So if we want to do that, we can advertise it and talk about it at the, we can approve it at the working meeting on that we already have scheduled on Friday. The first Monday of the month.
Right. I mean, I've looked at it. Fine, but we've never voted on this budget.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So we'll have that. So we just need to advertise, Jeff, and we'll have the final budget. It'll be a very short discussion, but we'll have that.
Okay. Currently, the way it's advertised now is the discussion was for tonight. If there are any changes, it would be available for public review on January 24th with possible adoption on February 7th at the workshop meeting.
So no changes necessary. We'll go.
Right,
yes, sir.
So the public has seen this budget. You've advertised it already.
Yes.
Correct?
The 24th.
We've advertised that. The way I advertised it was it would be discussed tonight. It would be available for public viewing on January 24th.
Okay.
So we could put it up on the website. We can make copies for people, whatever you like. And then we have on there for possible adoption at the February 7th workshop meeting.
That makes sense. So we talked about it tonight. No one wanted to make any changes. So we will formally adopt it at the February meeting is what I'm hearing. Right? That's
Yes.
David?
That's
Right. And like I said, yep. And we.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John, for your comments.
Yeah, I think it's entirely appropriate to review it. I think you would have no public criticism if you did that. If you need a bullet list of what we changed, Melissa and I could probably come up with a pretty good bullet list of what we did.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, because you won't find it easily yourself.
Yeah, my plan was either to get a bullet list or I will go line by line through that thing.
I think
everybody nuts.
I think it'd be easier if Melissa and I put together a bullet list, then you wouldn't have to go line by line.
All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
All right, folks.
Thank you, John.
If there aren't any public comments, I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:14 p.m. All in favor? Say aye.
Say aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Say nay.